the record button, and thank you all for clicking whatever buttons Zoom asks you to click. And as we come from our individual homes and we start to find our way together, I invite you to find a posture for your body that is comfortable and alert. Perhaps you want to move your body a bit, maybe bring some movement to your shoulders or your back or your head, anything that you want to do to just physically settle into this moment. And as always, you are absolutely free to keep your eyes open, to close your eyes if that feels supportive. And you can also soften your eyelids or lower your gaze, whatever feels right for you right now. And again, finding a position that is comfortable and at ease, and also alert. And as we all are sharing this Zoom space together from different cities, different countries, different parts of the planet, we start to find our way into this shared space together. And we have this time that we have dedicated to practicing being present for our lives. And we let go of the day, what's come before. And we let go of the mind chatter, let go of the fields of concern. And noticing anything that's here to be noticed. Perhaps there are thoughts or emotions or bodily sensations. And just noticing what it's like to be you right now. Nothing to fix, nothing to change. When we let go of the day, or when we let go of our mind chatter, or those things that we're concerned about, we're not pushing them away. We're just releasing our grip, if only for now. And giving ourselves permission to be fully here, to practice as a human being. And this is not the preamble to the meditation. This is it. This is the practice. That we be able to stop and breathe and take a moment to ourselves. And in this moment, I invite you, as best you can, if you wish, to take your awareness and put your awareness into your body and notice the sensations of the breath. And sometimes it can be helpful to take 2 or 3 breaths that are just a bit deeper, just to help you get a sense of the place in your body where you feel your breath the most. Or perhaps you'd like to rest your awareness in the place that you feel the breath is most pleasant. Perhaps it's in the chest, the inhale, the exhale. Perhaps you feel your breath the most in your belly, or maybe you feel your breath the most in your neck or upper chest, or just outside your nostrils. Just letting go of your control of the breath and not manipulating the breath in any way. Just observing rather than controlling the breath. And if your mind starts to wander, that's okay. You're not doing anything wrong. In fact, you're doing the practice just right. The moment we realize that our mind has wandered, that is the moment of mindfulness. And in that moment, we have choice. And if you like, you can choose if you'd like to stay with the thoughts and the story, or return to this present moment. Noticing the breath, always happening in the present moment. Perhaps you may notice how the breath expands the chest on the inhale and then falls away on the exhale. Just sensing how the chest lifts and falls away with each breath. The breath is such a familiar thing. Trusting the wisdom of the body to breathe just right. It's almost as though our body is breathing us. And if your mind starts to wander, that's okay. Our minds are like little puppies or little kittens, always exploring, always wandering, always wondering. And we don't need to scold the puppy or yell at the kitten. That's just what puppies and kittens do. But with kindness and gentleness and love, we can bring the puppy back to the center of the carpet. We can guide the little kitten back to the center of the room. And we can always return our awareness to whatever anchor we're using to connect to this present moment. Like the breath. Noticing this breath right here. Now noticing this breath. Now noticing this breath. Allowing yourself the space to be just as you are. Breathing in, breathing out, right here in this moment. To meditate means to go home to yourself. And that's what we're practicing. Practicing taking good care of the things that are happening inside of us. Taking care, not fixing, but taking care of the things that are happening inside us. And before we finish our meditation sit today, and before I offer today's teaching, if you like, take a moment to appreciate that you are capable of breathing. Appreciate that you have awareness, our birthright, this consciousness, this awareness, this attention, and that you are taking the time to familiarize yourself with this ever-present awareness. And in a moment, you'll hear the sound of 3 bells. And see if you can maintain as best you can your connection to the present moment. And will our minds wander? Absolutely. And we can always return to this breath, this moment, this life. Bong. 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 Sort of a bell. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for your kind attention, and so glad that we could all sit together. And it is, I'm so glad, yeah, that we could all sit together. It's a very intimate thing to meditate with other people. And some of us in here, like me, intimacy is hard. So it's so nice to be able to practice, yeah, connection and intimacy. Um, I thought that the only way to be intimate with people, like connection, deep connection, was to talk and tell my story and, you know, do you love me yet? I thought it was words and stories and but wow, there's so many different ways to connect with people, including just sitting together and breathing together. So anyways, I'm still Brian. We are still the Inside LA weekly mindfulness and deep suffering group. We are a practice group. We're an affinity group. This is a great group. We like to call this the Hope group. And Hope is both the acronym HOPE, or excuse me, the word hope. Maybe we should have a session on what hope is, maybe in the future. But HOPE is also an acronym that stands for healing ourselves through the present experience. Yeah, healing ourselves through the present experience. And so we've all been just hanging out in the present moment for the past 20 minutes or so. And it is a practice. Um, and yeah, I'm so glad that we could practice it. Now, today I will be giving the teaching. I hope it is of benefit. I hope it's interesting. Um, yeah, and yeah. So let me turn on my shared. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. I'm a professional. I'm a professional. Okay. It's happening. It's happening. Okie dokie. So today the topic is going to be on flooding and floods, and I have a fair amount of information. So, and if anybody wants these slides, you feel free to email me. There's some things in here that people will find interesting and want to reference. And every flood has its ebb. It's a Dutch expression, mindfulness, deep suffering, and flooding. And you'll hear some metaphors today. You'll will also, and I'm glad that this teaching has some things in the second half of well, sort of so what and what do we do? And I'm glad that there's some things there, and I hope they're interesting and maybe of benefit. So now, without further ado, today we are talking about water. Usually I like to have pictures of little sweeties and little cuties and foxes and pandas and geckos and doggies, but today we are starting with, well, this is the topic today. I think this is the first time. Yeah. So the first time I've started this way. So today we're talking about water. This planet is full of water everywhere, everywhere. Incredible. And it's really everywhere. This is I think this is one of those times where the camera lens is half in and half out of the water. So up close and personal. Interesting. More water, more water. How many more pictures of water is he going to show? Just one. So flooding. And again, as I mentioned before, I'm going to be talking about this m- literally, figuratively, metaphorically. So it's up to you in whatever ways you want to take it. Um, but flooding, terrifying. Again, I'm going to say some things that are obvious. As us humans, we cannot breathe underwater. Water is so scary for us, very scary. And we can be swept away so easily. And of course, when it comes to our psychological state or our emotional state or spiritual, sure, we can get overwhelmed. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. The concept of flooding, when we sense danger, when we are having, for example, a difficult conversation. Maybe some of us in here have had a boss or a supervisor or a spouse or a friend, maybe call or maybe send an email or leave a message on our answering machine message. We come home and there used to be answering machine messages with machines and red lights, and you'd push them and you'd find out who called. And they would say, Brian, we need to talk. Ooh, we need to talk. Sometimes it can be getting hard feedback. Can I offer you some feedback? Um, no. An argument, right? All these things, this concept, and I'd like to share this definition again, pulling from Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart. Flooding is a sensation of feeling psychologically and physically overwhelmed, and during a conflict. So there's a relational piece here too, right? When there is something that's scary, feels dangerous, making it virtually impossible to have a productive problem-solving discussion. Lots of us, well, for me, when I'm flooded, I can barely talk. And as I think this came up a bit ago in our check-ins, but survival, right? This is the time I need to get away. I need to fight. I need to freeze, maybe. Some other things we'll come to later. And this is the truth that there's only so much our bodies and our nervous systems can stand before they flip the survival switch, right? There's an expression some of you may have heard, flip your lid. And yeah, it is. This is what happens. If there's a switch, it's like, and the newest part of our brain, the frontal lobe, well, that's not needed when we're trying to survive. So flipping the survival switch and stop communicating and start protecting or attacking. And as I said, and maybe this is just me showing off with the alliteration, overwhelm and overdrive. Our bodies go into, ah, that's my definition of overdrive. That's what a car engine sounds. Maybe I should stick with one metaphor today, water. Now, I'm going to show some pictures of actual floods because this is what happens in many of our communities. It's too much. I know. And again, it's a metaphor here. And in this, water is always moving, but for us, for so many of us, we try to put down roots and we try to stop moving. About 12,000 years ago, when humans figured out farming and agriculture, really figured it out, we stopped wandering and we tried to stay put, and the water kept moving. And it's really, really scary. I guess I have to move. And this is I don't know, I saw this photo and it was really moving because even in the midst of these catastrophes, there are people who will take our hand. Connection, support are so important. As we said before, maybe it's impossible to survive a flood alone. And a lot of times when we are flooded, as I said before, we feel overwhelmed, we feel attacked, we feel confused. We all have this built-in meter, like a built-in thermostat of how much we can take, how much, uh, yeah, how much stress, how much emotional load we can take. And again, just wanted just to make this point here that it's everywhere. Water is everywhere. And in a glass here, it's not dangerous, but my goodness, it is dangerous. Can be. It feels dangerous sometimes. And also, some of you know that we're filled with water, lots of water. I mean, when I cry, and if I'm to taste my tears as they go down my cheek, it tastes salty. I wonder if, I guess maybe there's salt water inside us too. And crying for a lot of us, there's tears that come. It's too hard. This water is leaking, and sometimes it does feel like a flood coming. And even though crying is the very first thing that almost all of us did when we got here, the very, very first thing we all did when we got here, for a lot of us, it's like we're made to feel like we can't. We've got to keep that water inside. And crying is a natural and an important part of the human experience that can serve a variety of purposes. Sometimes it's connection. Sometimes, okay, I have enough onions. I don't need to cut it anymore. Sometimes it's a song or a movie. Maybe crying is one way that we connect with other people, that they can know what's it like, what it feels like inside us. And being flooded. Now, some of you are familiar with this. I know there's a few therapists and in the crowd. So this idea of a window of tolerance. And again, we all have this the body of water inside us, again, so to speak. I'm using this metaphorically, but also, yeah, we have water inside us. There's this window of tolerance in the middle there. That's where most of us are. There is this natural equilibrium inside us. This window of tolerance is where we feel, yeah, more or less grounded, present, able to ride the waves. And then sometimes, and I'm going to share another metaphor in a second, but sometimes the rapids, the waves, they can be too big. And sometimes it feels like the water is being drained away, and we can get very low. And the problem is not that we sometimes get up or down and knocked out of our window of tolerance. The problem isn't that it happens. It happens to all of us. This is a natural, brilliant thing that our body does. When we're knocked out of our window of tolerance, it's when we start, our bodies say, this is survival. This is survival mode. We need to survive. Here, and some of you, again, many of you have heard this: fight, flight, freeze, and also tend and befriend. I learned recently that it used to be called fawning, but they say that fawning is not a preferred term for the fourth category because of some connotations, and it has some negative implications anyways. So fight, flight, freeze, and tend and befriend. These are the ways that we survive. Again, this brilliant human mind and body. And this is another metaphor that I really like about the window of tolerance. In life, we have things coming at us all the time, and most times we're able to return the ball. But that's me at the bottom playing against Roger Federer, by the way. And the things come at us and we can hit them back. Sometimes we hit it into the net, but more or less we can return these balls, these stressors, the stress. But when we're overwhelmed by the number of tennis balls, the size of the tennis balls, pretty soon we can't. So sometimes we run, sometimes we throw our racket, sometimes we hide, sometimes we cozy up to the referee. And I really like the tennis metaphor for the window of tolerance. And before the flood, I'm just going to go through this because I'm a little bit short on time. And again, there's times where everything is flowing just fine. It is as it should be. Quote, should be. And then there are the floods. This is a picture of white water, by the way. When water gets churned up and becomes white water. And fear. And I think what you'll see in this face that we're looking at, fear. Uh-oh. This is how I feel on the inside a lot in life. And after the flood, just desperation. What am I going to do? In the future, in the past, how can this be my life? So now I'd like to share 3 sort of so whats about all this. Sort of solutions, but not solutions to fix this, but just more, well, okay, now what? So the first, I'd like to share about the mind, which is what we're talking about here. Much of this is happening in our minds, right? And just as a friendly reminder, what the mind is an assembly of memory, conditioned responses. For example, when I cry, I get hit. That's a conditioned response, and so I don't cry anymore. The mind is an assembly of memory, conditioned response, and past action held together in a network of electricity and endocrine signaling, rendered down to a single moving point of consciousness. That's a pretty good definition of the mind. And by the way, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the single moving point of consciousness, right, in a bit. And that in a body of water, there may not be a center, but with us, we have centers too. The other thing I wanted to share, this is Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy author. The single raindrop never feels responsible for the flood. So there's also, it's number 42, and it's an inside joke. So this non-judgment, right? Practicing that, blaming the water, blaming others, blaming ourselves. I just can't meditate right, And what we're practicing when we sit together is, paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. And then the other part to the mindfulness definition that sometimes gets left off, but John Kabat-Zinn and others say, nope, can't leave it off, is paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally, in the service of self-understanding and wisdom. So we practice. It's not the water's fault. That's just what water does. Okay, number 2. That was just a reflection about non-judgment. Acknowledgement and connection. When I am flooded, not if, but when I'm flooded, these are the things that help me. Help. Help is really helpful. And these are the things that I want, by the way. I want my feelings validated when I feel flooded. I don't want somebody to say, it's not that bad. There's people in Bangladesh who have this 5 times a year. You really shouldn't be complaining, Brian. No, validate my feelings. I believe you. I believe you. I see you. Providing a calm and a safe environment. This is also what I want when I feel flooded. Yeah. And I wonder how many of you can relate to this. What feels supportive and helpful when you feel flooded? Encouraging deep breathing, or some of us, we don't want to breathe deeply. Some of us, and again, the mindfulness community, sometimes we say, take a few deep breaths. Some of us, it's not safe to breathe deeply. Some of us, we had to hide under the bed or in the back of the closet, and breathing deeply, taking up additional space is not safe. So, encourage paced breathing can also be really helpful. Breathing in for 4, holding it for 5, breathing out for 7. This is what I want because I used to feel like I was drowning, just trying to get my head above water. I want someone to listen actively and not listening to try to find my diagnosis or try to catch me out or keep score. No, listen to understand me. Offering support. Sometimes I do want help. Where's the nearest FEMA station? How do I get, what do I do next? Now, the last bit, and then I'm going to finish this up soon, is this is a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. We must build dikes of courage to hold back the flood of fear. And for those who have not ever seen an embankment or a levee or a dike before, this is it. This is an embankment. And that we can protect each other and ourselves. And I also want to share this other theme about the center. Again, a body of water may not have a center, the ocean may not have a center, but we do. We do. And I'm going to go through maybe 10 different centers that many of us have. There may be a category that's been missed, but I don't think I've missed any. And by the way, this is from Stephen Covey's work, research. But here are some of the different centers that can help us and sometimes, quote unquote, drain some of the water away. Some of us are family centered. And around this is the center that our energy and our time and yes, our pain too flows. How interesting that in life, the things that we're often the most, the things that cause us the most pain are often the things, almost always the things that we also care the most about. Pain and values are two sides of the same coin. So for those of us that are family centered, yeah, this is our center. And for other people, we're money centered. Sure. And again, it's not my place to tell anybody what their center is, but that's their center. Work centered. Yeah, that's their center. Possession centered. Sure. Spouse or partner centered. And by the way, I just wanted to include this because this image was tweeted by @Kristen3119782 just think how many people have ever taken photos of centers of water before. And maybe, and I think the point that I'm trying to prove here is that we all have centers. There's as many centers as there are people. And well, thank you, New York Times. And there's another center. Pleasure centered. Another center. Enemy centered. Yes, some people are enemy centered. Some people are church or religious organization or community centered. Yeah. Some people are self-centered. And by the way, isn't it mesmerizing? I wonder if, well, it's for me, whenever I am like taking a bath or looking at a sink and the water goes down and it makes that swirl, I'm mesmerized, or a toilet, I'm mesmerized. I can't take my eyes off it. I wonder if maybe there's something in there that I'm resonating with. What's my center? And some of us principle centered. And this center, right? And maybe this presentation or maybe you already know what your center is. And maybe you have several centers. And as I said before, the pain and values, where the things that cause us the most pain and suffering is also we're also connected to the parts, to the places where the things we care the most about. Yeah, yeah. In our pain, we find our values, and in our values, we find our pain. And last week we talked a little bit about paradox, and yeah, for example, this world, there's water and land. There's love and hate in the world. Two sides. And again, it's interesting, just finishing up here, that water nourishes this land. And again, the water's not bad. In fact, we need it. And this is just a theme maybe of a lot of our groups, that when we connect with each other and connect with ourselves and connect with meaning, we're also returning to ourselves. We return to ourselves every time we bring our awareness back to this breath or our feet on the ground and returning to ourselves. This is a poem by Rupi Kaur. "This is the recipe of life," said my mother, and she held me in her arms as I wept. "Think of those flowers you plant in the garden each year. They will teach you that people, too, must wilt, fall, root, rise in order to bloom." And all healing comes from connection and community. And that's what we're doing here, coming together, supporting each other as we remember our centers, remember that we don't have to do it alone, whether it be meditation or anything else. Yeah, and practicing. And thank goodness we can practice the things that matter to us. So thank you for your kind attention. And I hope this teaching was of benefit and helpful. And if there were any parts of it that caused any harm, please know that that was not my intention. And thank you again. Let me turn off the recording so I can curse.